Welcome to the Future of Payroll and Workforce Management Insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management on HR.com podcast. And I have with me here the guest for this special episode is Jim McCoy, who's CEO of Atlas.
Brent, it's great to be here with you. We're wrapping up the conference. As you can see, not a lot of people behind us, but it's kind of nice to have a little bit of quiet time to reflect on the last few days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And thanks for helping me there. Yes, we are recording from the HR Technology Conference and Expo. And this is from a little nook and cranny, I think a couple levels above the expo floor, kind of a quiet area. This is cool. So Jim, Atlas being an employer of record, you have a lot of stuff going on. I know we're talking in the green room. We have a green room here. It's not a late night talk show, but we do have a green room. We're talking about, some of the macroeconomic trends right now, what's going on. We're going to talk about that. But first, as I like to ask all my guests is, what galvanizes you? What gets you motivated and moving every day when it comes to the world of work? I find most people have a real passion in this space.
Yeah, Brent, thank you. That's such a great question. So I actually started my career in financial services, but transitioned into HR services, say 20 years ago. And what I found so appealing about the space is the impact that you can have in the work that we do in changing people's lives. So I came from my mother was a social worker, and I saw the things that she would do to impact communities. And as I look back at my career over the last 20 years, the teams that I've been responsible for leading have probably put 250,000 people to work almost on an annual basis. So I aggregate it, and I'm looking at probably at some point I've touched the career path of at least 2 million people. And I suspect that a lot of your listeners have, if they stood back and thought about all of the people that they put to work, it's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, and in many cases in the millions. And what I love about what we do is that to be effective in our roles, we have to understand how companies work, how economies work, how global trade flows work, how the psychology of human beings, what are the things that drive them to be effective in what they do. And so we are really in the business of doing well by doing good. We impact people's lives, and there's nothing more fulfilling than being able to see, here's how many people I put to work this month.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love the way you put that, and it's the HCM space, HCM, kind of a sort of a sterile term for what this is, right? It's more of the human experience when it comes to work, right? But this is a market, sort of a for-profit area of the market that's about helping people, really. Mm-hmm. It's about, everybody needs a job.
Yeah.
Right. And you were talking about, I think it was your mother who was in social work, and how she was an inspiration to you. And this is sort of the hadn't occurred to me, but HCM is kind of the for-profit sort of kissing cousin of of social work and that kind of stuff. It's kind of interesting. In your 20 years, having touched all those sort of working lives, right?
Yeah.
What is it about, because we want to talk about macroeconomic trends today, like what it's like right now, what the climate is like. How is it today, like right now, compared to, say, I don't know, 5 years ago, last year, 10 years ago? Like, what's going on right now?
Well, we've had a really interesting journey in the last 5 years. So if you think about it, exactly 5 years ago, we were finally starting to see green shoots out of the pandemic. So all of a sudden, companies, instead of letting employees go, they were starting to try and figure out, how do I hire really, really, really fast? Because so many of them were caught behind the 8 ball when it came to having enough people on staff to be able to take advantage and get their of economic opportunity and get their companies growing again. And then add into that really a shift in kind of hiring trends, skill sets needed, largely driven by AI. What we're seeing is that practitioners in the space are having to think about it's almost like they have to be in the process of reinvention of their entire function every 6 months. Um, what we're seeing currently is with all the uncertainty around trade, we're seeing and frankly inflation and other factors that are impacting companies' ability to be profitable, companies' ability to be able to hire people is a pullback in hiring. For the first time in many years, we have less job openings than people actually looking for work. And if you start to look at the macro trends, at least in the U.S., what you're seeing is more and more long-term unemployed. It's taking people longer to get jobs, and they're not moving jobs to get the raises that they were historically accustomed to. And all of that in a high inflation environment. So there's just a lot of pressure on the consumer that puts pressure on companies. Where what's interesting in the EOR space is a lot of companies are using EOR to be able to expand because there's a need to expand the markets that they sell into. There might also be a need to expand where their supply chain is based on tariffs that are being applied in different areas. So we're seeing quite a bit of demand there. And then the other thing is we're seeing companies kind of shift how they think about where they attract talent. So, historically, it was companies looked for talent overseas because there was such a talent shortage in the United States. Now what we're seeing is companies are saying, hey, we also need to balance the cost and apply, the same relative costs in the market. So that's really driving a lot of the adoption that we're seeing in the EOR space.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, what I'm hearing is uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is sort of the kryptonite to hiring,
That's
right?
right.
And and it's really interesting as well. I'm glad you brought up trade and tariffs, because that's something that's been interesting to me. Is how is this uncertainty? Supposedly there's a rhyme and reason to it. Trying to get someplace, and I don't want to quantify that or qualify it, but I mean, in the meantime, it's it's just people kind of just like sort of drawing back a little bit, just waiting. Do you think this is
Yeah.
kind of like a wait and see kind of climate, or is there a little bit more going on?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly. I think there is a global reset for companies are taking this moment to be able to reset kind of what the makeup of their workforce is. Um, Trade, as I mentioned, it's really driving companies expanding into new markets because they need new markets to sell into that are more reliable, or they're looking to diversify supply chain, and those are you know really what we're seeing is two key reasons that companies are looking to accelerate hiring outside of their home markets. That said, I think that we are living in a little bit of turbulence right now,
Yeah.
and so no one exactly knows where tariff rates are going to settle, where what will happen with interest rates. So, for instance, as interest rates drop, then you'll see more cash in the economy, you'll see more investment, therefore you'll see more hiring. And I think so. I think the mentality right now for a lot of organizations is wait and see. At the same time, that protection of talent that really we saw ramping up during the pandemic, like let's keep our people, keep the very best people, there's been no slowdown in that. So organizations are really thinking through, how do I make sure that I maintain that employer of choice, even with all of the other economic pressures I'm under, because they recognize the cost of what it takes to replace the best talent when that talent leaves.
So what I'm hearing is that that there's definitely been a sort of a walking back in terms of hiring,
Mm-hmm.
but companies in general you're seeing are very keen on keeping the talent that they have.
That's right.
Okay. So what's interesting about all this as well is so I have a couple of questions. One's very kind of more sort of logistical, or and if you could hold this thought, what can EORs do to help companies that are maybe looking to be a little bit more fluid globally? It's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily just that imperative, hey, we got to go to a new region and an EOR can help us get set up quickly, but how can an EOR help them kind of move around more flexibly, more readily in this less in this more turbulent environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that you made me think of though is, yeah, that rush to rehire just as we began exiting the worst of the pandemic, right? And that's that was like a watershed moment.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was like COVID. It was so weird, right?
That's right.
And how does the market we always hear about the invisible hand of the market, that things will correct themselves and the market, always knows best and all this kind of stuff. And I kind of believe that. I'm an adherent to that. But I wonder with stuff that's just absolutely just across the board and sudden and just, the gravity of it, like a catastrophic event.
Yeah.
And I think about how the market responded, just sort of like a blunt instrument. Okay, let's hire everyone back. Was that necessarily the wisdom of a free market? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think about AI. You knew we weren't going to get through a podcast episode when we talking about AI, right? But are things happening too fast on maybe on the AI front too? Like, how is the market going to? How has the market been dealing with these tumultuous events? Like these just across the board events. Like, how do you see that maybe leveling out in the future, or will it not?
Yeah, well, it's a great thought, and let's work our way backward on that question from AI. So what are we seeing in AI? There are certain routine kinds of jobs where say like early customer or first level customer service types of roles, a lot of which can be replaced by AI, and that's probably a good thing because those are jobs that companies struggle to fill. They are they used to be kind of the entry level roles, but in reality now we're looking at an entry level talent that's a little bit more sophisticated to can take on more work, especially work that entails judgment.
Yeah,
And um, so that is one thing. The other thing that we're seeing though is AI is actually driving a lot of hiring. So
absolutely.
because so much investment is going into what are the tools that I can use, how the kind of talent that you need, the developer talent, the analytical talent, that's actually creating new markets. We're seeing that for sure in our business, and that clients are saying, we're just not finding enough talent. We need to expand it. We need to expand our recruiting horizons into other markets where we might not be set up. But if we can find the people, can we hire them through you?
Yeah,
So I think AI, like any other emerging technology, both destroys and creates.
yeah,
So there will be certain jobs that will be automated. That was many of those jobs were underway anyway. Through robotics process automation before AI, through other chatbots and other sorts of things that enabled a more fluid connection with a back office system that was doing processing. Um, you mentioned kind of how companies would think about um, how are they thinking about hiring? And I think the main thing is we've not seen a step back from companies committing to be an employer of choice in many places. Now there are some other external factors around DEI and other sorts of things that have really helped to create and build culture within organizations. So we see some shifts in that. But I think what is important, and we see this in our business, is that for those employers that want to be an employer of choice, they're looking to replicate that experience everywhere they operate. So that might be through their own HR functions, or in the case of an EOR, they should be thinking about the EOR as an extension of their own HR function.
yeah.
If we're
Plus better.
invested, yeah, if we're like, as an example, if we're invested in building talent, your EOR has to be able to support that through learning, through other sorts of through learning pathways, other sorts of tools to make sure that the skill set of the people that are employed through the EOR are connected, and then B, have access to those tools to be able to do that. So in our case, for instance, we invested in a really terrific learning platform that we can help design custom content. We also use that for a lot of functional things. So for instance, being compliant in health and safety, being compliant in with local laws and regulations, it just makes it easier. You get people accustomed to working in a learning platform that addresses that, but then also gives them the opportunity to continue to grow their career. So I think because companies are being very cautious around hiring. They're trying to limit the amount of layoffs. They're protective about their top employees. It creates this kind of almost a perfect storm for them insofar as I'm not hiring like I used to, but I really have to think very creatively about how I maintain the individuals I have in the organization.
That's really interesting. It also, learning, a learning solution. It was not on my bingo card for an EOR, and that's probably another episode we should do soon, Jim. Is what are some of the other things that EORs can do?
Sure.
Hold that thought for the next episode. Thank you though for being on this episode of the podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks so much, Brent. It was great to connect and happy to cover that learning and all the other things. And like I said, in our business, our goal is to really be an extension of a team. And so we have to be constantly thinking about what are the trends, what are the things that our clients have to react to, and then how do we make sure that we can extend that into the workforce that we employ for them. So it's once again, back to kind of the what's so cool about our business is we share this goal of creating the best work experiences and the best employee experiences. And I think there's a certain nobility in that, if I can take us full circle and to kind of, finish where we began, that is what makes what we're doing exciting. That's what is so cool about seeing all the new tools and technologies and things that you can use at a conference like this to be able to enhance employee experience and really build the business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And important and meaningful too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.